Next up, so the penultimate speaker of this session is Karl, talking about linking linked places. So going beyond, I think, the creation of these resources and trying to do interesting linked data-y things with them. Over to you, Karl.
Just a moment. I wanted my own machine because I'm going to demo something. And I've heard demos don't always go perfectly when you switch machines. How are we doing? Good. There we go. I am in this work trying to link linked places, but I thought that ultimately linking linked places was just too long or too cute or some combination, so I'm just saying linked places. I'm a geographer by training, GI science particularly, and semantics, computing and knowledge representation within that is where I'm coming from for those who don't know me. The most important thing I can say here is there are these URLs, and you should make note of them, and they'll be on further slides. So there's a little demo prototype software, and there's some blog posts that explain just what I've been up to, we've been up to, as I'll explain in a minute, and a GitHub repository where my spaghetti code is visible to all in all of its glory, and it's not that bad. So what if, when navigating an application like this experimental Parapleo application that the folks of Pelagios have built, and you click on a link, you discover a place, a link, and you click, ultimately you can be delivered a list of all of the artifacts within the contributing collections that have referenced that place. Well, what if you click on that place and you discover all of the journeys for which that place has been a waypoint throughout history, or the flows of commodities, information, and people to and from that place over the course of history. Another aspect of the vision driving this work, or the motivation, is the sort of thing that you saw with Maxime's presentation earlier, the idea of digital historical atlases that have underlying them the sort of scholarship that is being done to create these place references. And this would be extraordinary. So the work of extracting place references within text, ultimately being the evidentiary substrate for a category of digital historical atlases. So that's the motivator. I'm struck by the figure on our program, because there are all these places indicated, and yes, they are linked, but there's more than one sense of link. Pelagios has done an amazing job to facilitate the linking of place annotations. Places are themselves linked, have been over history. Well, let me just do a little corollary to that vision. I think that ultimately we can arrive at an interactive system that describes the creation of the emergence of settlements and the connections between them. And by connections, I don't mean only roads and railroads and canals and so forth, but I mean the flows of information, the epistolary information, so on and so forth, that we are gathering from all of these various spheres of the Academy. I wanted to see what the idea of linking linked places meant in the context of Pelagio, so I just got started doing some stuff. And the first thing that I do is I think about models. I try to identify what it is exactly is involved, and go through a few stages, and I won't belabor it. There's some discussion in the blog post about all of this. There's a very elegant and long-standing model for the sort of thing that I'm describing. It's also good for rows, which is the network model of nodes and edges. It's very simple. It's tried and true. So beginning with that, I asked myself, well, what sorts of, if thinking about modeling geographic movement, the movement of people, information, commodities, and so forth over the Earth's surface and near Earth's surface over time, what is the most abstract form for representing that? Not sure why I started there exactly, but has something to do with GI science. At any rate, came up with these three levels of geographic embeddedness in networks. So the first, I think I'm going to read my caption here. The path geometry is unknown or is not relevant, paths between places. In the second case, path geometry is known or estimated. In the third case is of directional flows of anything between two places. It's a dyadic form. So in the network model, you have very, very simple node and edge tables, and then you can have any number of attributes associated with nodes or edges. And that's a great place to start from. The next step really required some help. The next stage of modeling. I spent a lot of time agonizing over ontologies in various ways, and I've become enamored of the concept of ontology design patterns. These are small modular pieces that solve particular problems. You might imagine a design pattern for place, a design pattern for participation, et cetera, et cetera. And in this case, I'm interested then in not the whole enchilada, but what are the patterns involved here, and what are the entities? So I had a great meeting with Rainer Simon and Lex Berman from Harvard, the Center for Geographic Analysis, and we spent 3 days hammering out what ultimately, what this figure represents. I'm not sure how well you can read it, but again, it's reproduced on the blog, and you can explore it there and the explanation thereof. We decided that there's the most general term for what it is we're talking about, we're going to call a route. It's imperfect, there's no perfect term. There are three classes or subclasses of routes or types of routes: journeys, flows, and named historical routes. Routes are composed of one or more segment. They have any number of properties. They are attested in sources always. You can't really see in this figure, but there are very many expressions of cardinality associated with the elements and relations in this diagram, so it's saying quite a bit, but it's not terribly, terribly formal. So routes are composed of segments, and each segment has has temporal attributes that are associated there. You can see that each segment is some place, and everything about place is handled by others, handled by gazetteers. So the red boxes that you see there indicate this sort of modular approach. On the lower part of the screen is the gazetteer world. On the upper right part of the screen is the physical ways universe of modeling roads and railroads and canals and rivers and so on and so forth. The sort of thing that Orbis really was after. This is touching on eventive stuff. That is, what occurred upon these ways. A very different sort of thing to model. Want to hurry up so that I can get to the software a little bit. After initially thinking about a way too elaborate approach to adding time to our usual data structures, I went back to GeoJSON, which is terribly popular and useful and readable, et cetera, et cetera. And I, along with others, decided that it's probably useful to have a when object parallel with geometry at the same level of geometry. So threw that in there and started calling it GeoJSON T. This is all experimental and a proposal. When objects within GeoJSON, without getting too much into the details, there are a couple of places where geometries can occur at the top level of a feature, but also in geometry collections. That is, a feature can have a geometry collection. So an individual feature, for example, a route, or Poland, can have any number of geometric expressions and properties associated with them. The details are all on blog posts. Wish I had the time to write academic papers. So exploding a when object, this is just an example of what one might find in there, and I'm going to rush forward and indicate, I want to see what you can see. The work in this work, then, what I did after this meeting with Reiner and Lex was to take that figure that I showed you with the arrows and the entities and relationships between them and so forth, and translate it into GeoJSON T. Find a way to express that stuff in GeoJSON T, that is GeoJSON with a when object. And I was successful in doing that, and if at this stage, if you were to deliver me two CSV files, one for places and one for segments, route segments of any kind, and you use standard for each, you had entries, you had columns for 5 or 6 standard fields, but then any number of additional fields according to your modeling requirements. There is a script that would turn it into GeoJSON T that could be fed directly into a leaflet map, and I'm going to show you my experiments at doing that. So this is what some GeoJSON T for a place looks like, GeoJSON T for a route feature looks like, which is the geometry and time for which is expressed in a geometry collection within GeoJSON. Time for demo. So this is kind of a kludge. There are 5 data sets. It really, the purpose of this is not an imagined application, in a particular imagined application. It's really just a way of building something that has a map and a timeline, and allows you to visualize and manipulate data from 5 sample data sources. And the 5 that I had to hand were a pilgrimage by a monk, Xuanzang, in the 7th century. That's an individual journey. These are in different categories of journeys, flows, and historical routes and route systems. The pilgrimage by Xuanzang, my own current journey around the world, which I've called Roundabout, is in there. Venetian Encanto trade is in there twice. It's there as journeys. I have data for 840 ships with captains and all of their itineraries as individual journeys that occurred at particular times. But also that same data has been transformed into flows. And this is something that's interesting and true about data for routes, is that it can take several forms, but ultimately that network model is going to work, or something that's riffing off that network model. And historical routes have Ming courier routes. Let me go ahead and click that. This is postal stations and connections. That's too bad. No.
Yeah, just do this two-screen thing.
Huh?
Two-screen thing, maybe you just need to turn up screen.
Well, let me try something. Let me get out of that. Maybe that's the issue. Yeah. Microsoft took over my OS. Go figure. Ming Dynasty postal stations is a fascinating data set, and people are interested. The lines between them don't indicate actual roads. This is a network system. We know that there were these postal stations. We don't know exactly how people moved, and we don't know paths. This is not individual event data, journey data. It's interesting stuff. I'm going to race really quickly through some of the functionality of this. You can see that in this case, this is a route system that was valid for some period of the Ming Dynasty. So down on the timeline, there's just this simple line. For the journey, you'll see individual events. Everything is just sort of live in the traditional ways you'd expect a mapping application to be. You click on a place, and there is linked data implementation going on here. So the entry in the China Historical GIS Gazetteer is available there. I haven't done anything to format this response because this isn't a real application, but I could parse this and do whatever. I can also find connections. So for this individual place, what connections has there been throughout all of these 5 data sets to that place? In this case, you can download this stuff as GeoJSON-T to have a look at it. In this case, I wanted to demonstrate a wild and crazy force-directed graph. Let me get a better one, actually. I haven't really done anything with it. What's happening is that on the fly, that GeoJSON-T is being parsed back into a very simple node edge format that D3 can handle. And so this is just a demonstrator to show, well, you can do what Nicole loves to do, which is to remove the geography from networks or put it back, remove it, put it back, and see what that's about. And this is an indicator of that. The Venetian Incanto flows. In this case, I have actual paths for these flows because I generated them with the Orbis algorithm. The Orbis has a model for the Mediterranean, which I'm going to go ahead and use for the entire span of history to model potential routes between places. Obviously, that's just a joke. And so the graph for that is a little bit more interesting. You can see Venice in the middle. Well, that sort of makes sense, right? So, I mean, then the possibilities, just as far as applications go, just go on from there. You can search for things. Type in, hopefully you can search for things. Ragusa, so I've ingested the gazetteer parts of all of these 5 data sets into an Elasticsearch index so that and modified some of the entries where there's overlap. So the index knows that Ragusa and Dubrovnik are the same thing, and this is the sort of thing that Reiner does in his ingest of data from various gazetteers. So there's Ragusa, I get back Dubrovnik, I get back the fact that it's Ragusa and Dubrovnik are the same thing, and for both of them, what are the edges, what are the paths, what are the routes that place has been involved with in my particular set of data. I might be down to the last thing. I'll just show you, I guess, some eventive sort of stuff. There's the pilgrimage of Zhuangzhang with the same sort of thing, in this case looking at a different gazetteer, not the China historical one, so it's been wired up to 4 different gazetteers. And my own journey, which is now right here. And we'll proceed. That's it, thank you.